and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. The Association of Women Lawyers, along with the Pelajar Bukan Pengantin Coalition, they've recently launched a new campaign to refocus attention on the issue of child marriage in Malaysia. Now, this comes amid questions as to the progress made under the 5-year National Strategic Plan in handling the causes of child marriage, which was launched in 2020. Now, joining me on the show, I have Sheena Gurbakhash, who is the committee member and former president of the Association of Women Lawyers. Sheena, thank you for joining me on the show. Let's talk about this new campaign, hoping to bring the issue of child marriage back to the fore, into conversations and into the focus of policymakers as well. I'm curious as to why you think it's necessary to do this now. Based on your observations, has the discourse, has action on this, has all of that stalled?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. And I think it's very important that I thank Jaya, who actually have given us the media for free to get this campaign out and onto our highways everywhere in KL, and to revitalize the conversation. And I also think I need to give a big thank you to all the other coalition members of Pelajar Bukan Pengantin. It's a coalition of many women's and children's NGOs and other interested groups who have been campaigning, behind the scenes, tracking things, having dialogues and doing a lot of work to try and keep this thing going. So having, I think due recognition needs to be given. So your question was, have things stalled? Well, I think we are at a rather important point. We have gone through, the COVID years where everything has basically, all our lives were turned upside down. We're now facing a cost of living crisis, especially for the B40s. We are, things have basically changed a great deal from the time this SOP was first formulated. And we really don't know where we are on this issue of child marriage. So this campaign was really important for us because it brings focus back to the issue again, and it starts the dialogue up again, because it's an important dialogue and we need to move ahead on this. Other issues seem to be superseding this one.
Okay. Well, the plan, I remember when it was first launched, and it was launched to, great enthusiasm and optimism, because it wasn't just a kind of singular focus plan. It was quite holistic. It looked at multiple aspects of not just the law, but also education and awareness and strengthening kind of parenting skills and kind of sexual reproductive health skills. All of that seemed to me the right way to go. I'm so concerned that there's been no word about this. What do we know about what's happening with this plan?
The fact is we don't. Right? We don't. I mean, we know the plan identified 7 causes, which was low income, lack of access to reproductive health, lack of access to education, social pressure, where the marriage was seen as a solution to various problems. And then what we're looking for, so what has happened since then? Like I said, we don't know. We actually do not know.
And it's a 5-year plan. I understand that the pandemic disrupted a lot of policy, refocused our attention to other public health issues. But it was supposed to be 2025, if I'm not mistaken, for us to kind of reassess the plan. And we're also up against some other international deadlines, aren't we, Sheena?
Yes, we are. We have made commitments under the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, on gender equality issues. And this is one of those issues that needs to be addressed. So, we need to be answerable to our international commitments. And like I said, there's 2 years for this plan to go, and where is it gone?
Right.
Right? I
So
mean,
one of the things, sorry, you were saying, Sheena?
sorry. This is the thing that, I think we really need to think about, that while we are, preoccupied with jurisdictional issues and sensitivity issues and structural issues and budgetary issues, almost more than 3 children are being married in Malaysia every single day. Every day. That's what the numbers are. Right? Whether you take your number, the numbers fluctuate from 1,005 a year, 2,000 to 1,002 a year, right? But when you do the math, it works out to 3 children a day. So from the time this plan was formulated till now, 3 children a day have been married. What's happened to them? Where have they gone? How are they earning a living? What are they doing? Who knows? Who's tracking it? And these children are going to continue to be married at that rate until we actually get serious about something and make the changes necessary to stop this.
You don't think we're serious about it? Can you tell me a little bit elaborate a little bit about what you meant by the jurisdictional issues? Where are we in terms of where the law stands right now and the legal complexities in addressing child marriage issues in Malaysia?
Okay, the law as it stands for non-Muslims falls under the Law Reform Marriage Divorce Act, right? And basically it says if you are over 18 and under 21, you need to get your parents' consent to get married. A parent or a guardian's consent, right? However, between 16 and 18, application can be made for a girl to be married. This applies to girls only. So it sets a minimum age from 16 to 18, you need to make special applications. From 18 to 21, you need the consent of your parents. Okay? With Muslims, the law is generally that permission needs to be obtained if the girl is under 18. In most cases, it is set at 18 for boys and 16 for girls. Selangor and Kedah have now made it 18 for everybody, right? However, exceptions can still be made. So application can be made if the girl is younger or either child is younger than 18.
Right, and this is the loose law that you were talking about. There are gaps in the law that needs to be addressed and tightened. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So part of the problem is this: different states have got different laws, especially in the case of Muslims, different states have different laws. So what is happening is, if I don't like the law in my state, I will just go and get married in another state where it's easier. Or I go across the border to Thailand and I get married there. Now, once the marriage is done, it is extremely difficult to have it undone, because the general thinking seems to be that, it's now a valid marriage, so you can't invalidate it.
Right. And you mentioned, in the fact that we don't have data, we don't know what's happened to the 3 children a day who are married, who have been married off. What do we understand about the data that we have? I was doing some research on this, and there's data that stops at 2018 and 2019. There's data that's conflicting. I'm curious to know, and that's just in terms of the number of child marriages. Do we track what happens in terms of divorce, in terms of the children, where and how they advance in life and whether they are trapped in cycles of poverty. Who should be collecting this data? Who do we go to for this data?
So far as we know, the data is not being collected or collated apart from the very simple how many child marriages, right? I think, if you want to make sound strategies, whether you want to do a public re-education program, whether you want to address specific issues, right? We need data to actually be able to do that. And, this applies to government as well as anyone else. So we would very much like to see data by age. So, how many people under 16? How many people over 16? How many boys? How many girls? Right? We would like to see data by economic background. Right? Is it a rural problem? Is it an urban problem? Where is this problem? We would like to see, for example, data when applications are made as to the reasons why applications are being made for permission to be granted for child marriage.
Is there a reason why you think this data could be sensitive? I mean, without the data, there's a vacuum of information. What happens is people come up with their own kind of misconceptions and prejudices against the issue of child marriage. Why would it be a difficult, why would it be challenging to present this data to address some of these misconceptions?
We don't know. I can actually say we don't know, right? I mean, without sounding like a conspiracy theory nut, and saying, we don't want to know, that's why we don't collect the data. But if you don't, and this, and for example, how many kids drop out of school below the age of 16, right? And then how many of them end up getting married? That would be something under Ministry of Education, right? How many of these children then get pregnant, right? Or seek reproductive health advice? That would also be data that we need to know, right? And then there's the actual numbers and why people are opting for marriage. So there are many, the sources of the data are diverse, but there's no political will to actually create a centralized body to say, this is what we need.
Sheena, thank you so much for bringing this back to our attention and for the campaign for refocusing conversation on the issue of child marriage in Malaysia. We're going to take a very quick break here on Consider This. We will be back with more. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. Let's continue our discussion about the current state of child marriage in Malaysia. What progress have we made in addressing the issue? Joining me now is Professor Datuk Dr. Noraida Endut. She's a professor at the Unit for Research on Women and Gender, or KANITA, at University Science Malaysia. Professor Noraida, thank you so much for being on the show with me today. Now, we have had this national plan to address child marriage since, I think, 2020. It was a 5-year plan. We're halfway through it now. It was a great plan with lots of strategies and actions and dedicated ministries and agencies. The question is, where are we currently? What do you know about the status of the plan? What aspects of the plan have been effective and what aspects have not yet been implemented?
Okay, thank you, Mel. Thank you for inviting me. Yes, I agree with you. The national policy is the national plan looking at cause of child marriage in Malaysia is quite beautiful. It has got a lot of details that can be implemented successfully. But as far as I know, I have not really seen very concrete activities that have been done in pursuance of the national plan. I'm sure that, for example, the Ministry of Women, Family and Community Development already have set up task force internally to deal with the issue. It may take a little bit of time to establish more concrete implementation. But I also want to remind you that for the strategies have actually been designed or drafted in Malaysia on child marriage, even since the year 2009, when we have the national policy on women, because the national policy on women is actually also drafted together with the action plan for women's development. There are 13 sectors in the action plan, and in one of the sectors, especially with regard to violence against women, child marriage issue is a particular eradication of child marriage is a particular sub-objective of the action plan. So we already have. I mean, we have already been talking about child marriage for a long time.
Right.
I agree with the 7 factors that is presented in the national plan as well, which was actually based, I think, particularly on the study done by Professor Datuk Azia Awal in 2018, which recommended these factors. So those factors are key factors that needed to be addressed.
So what I'm understanding is that this has long been an issue that policymakers have been concerned about, are thinking about addressing through different interventions, multi-stakeholder approach. But the question is, after so many years that we have been focusing on this, what concrete progress have we made in addressing the issues? Do you think that there has been progress made?
Yeah, I think one of the important ones that I feel needs to be highlighted is actually the fact that 2 states in Malaysia have changed their age at marriage for women under the Islamic family law, and I think this is particularly in pursuance to the plan. So in that sense, the plan has highlighted the importance of changing the law, because legal reform is a very, very important step forward where we actually change the permissibility of child marriage through the law. So Selangor and Kedah, Selangor earlier in 2020 and later Kedah in 2022 has changed the legal age at marriage for women from 16 to 18. And I think this should be highlighted, and I think all of the other states should really follow suit in this attempt.
So I know Malaysia can't be the only country grappling with the issue of child marriage. Are there any examples from other countries, particularly in this region, that have been successful in addressing or significantly reducing child marriage? Are there policies, strategies that we can find effective, particularly in a multicultural, multi-religious setting?
Yeah, I think several countries have been able to move forward in certain areas. So they are probably not successful in all areas, but they may be successful in some areas. I think one of the important things is a clear ban on child marriage. I think many countries have attempted it. So for example, if you're saying that the Western countries are advanced in these areas, incidence of child marriage may be low in these areas, but not many countries in the West, for example, even have a clear ban on child marriage. So until recently, so like Norway just had a ban a few years ago, a clear ban. Basically, before there was no prohibition. And I think, for example, Indonesia, in our neighborhood, So Indonesia have increased the age of marriage to 19, which is a little bit more even than 18 nationally. So I think these are various steps forward. And in Tanzania, for example, the court actually played a good role because the court actually declared, for example, child marriage as unconstitutional. So other than the administration, other than the legislature, the court, the judiciary may also play a good role.
So beyond the legal change, because I'm hearing that policy and legal changes are key to addressing this issue, eradicating child marriage, ending child marriage, the practice of child marriage completely. But what else? What other broader shifts in society are needed to get the buy-in for this necessary change?
I think some of the main reasons for child marriage that was identified by past research is actually lack of sexual and reproductive health knowledge and services, and together with that is the socio-cultural response. You know, when teenage gets pregnant, the only recourse is marriage. You know, so so that's those are one of the issues that can be tackled. Is basically how to change the mindset, socio-cultural mindset, that sort of looking at marriage, child marriage as a kind of response to poverty, response to pregnancy. You know, so we do need to have an increased awareness about that will actually show us marriage is not, you know, the response to teenage pregnancy. Or so education is a response. Education about sexual and reproductive health, preventing pregnancies amongst teenagers. And also about education to parents, you know, not to respond in that manner, because child marriage, especially amongst, for girls especially, because 90% of our child marriage are amongst girls, even though boys are also, some boys are marrying at a younger age. It's because that legally it can only happen when there's parental consent or parental request to the courts, for example. So parents also needed to be educated in this area.
Right, because you need the parents' consent to get married. So giving parents that skill of how to talk to their children about sexual and reproductive health, or to deal with unintended pregnancies, all of that I think is a benefit in ending the practice of child marriage. In my conversation earlier with Sheena Gurbakhash from the Association of Women Lawyers, she mentioned the lack of data, the need for data, so we know exactly a breakdown of how old the children are that are being married, what data we have, if they continue schooling, if they have offspring, and all of that. And I'm just wondering, in the absence of that data, there are some common misconceptions about, child marriage, that this issue is confined to a specific community, a religion, or a race, when in fact it affects everyone. Can you, what would you like people to know, Dr. Noraida, about the issue of child marriage in Malaysia? It's so nuanced and complex, and I think people don't have a true understanding of it. But what would you like our audience today to know?
I think the most important thing is that to understand that it is an issue. Child marriage is an issue. It is wrong because there are so many social and health implications, socioeconomic and health implications to girls, especially being married underage, so I think there is a need for so what I hope really, you're right about data, for example, but we can have an indicative data at the moment, from population census, for example, because population census actually have the numbers for marriage between the years 15 and 19, so the first age that is recorded for marriage is 15 to 19. So we know that 15 is underage. So we can guess at the number of child marriage that's happening. And also there are also other data that has come up now. But I think the most important thing also is that there should be a sex disaggregated data. Even while there's a population census, it is very difficult for us to get the sex disaggregated data for marriage, for child marriage. But there are already data that shows more girls than boys who are married at a young age, and child marriage happen in two forms. Either a girl is married to a boy who's both underage, or a girl is married to an adult. So this actually, girl married to an adult actually open a whole lot of other issues, because often the marriage where the man is actually much older than the girl was instigated by situation of rape, for example. So we have heard about this, So it's very insidious. I mean, looking at marriage as a solution for rape, I think that's a very, very dangerous context that we can have, because of all the underpinnings in relation to violence against women due to the situation. Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping our conversation can start more conversations about this issue and highlight to policymakers the need to get some concrete action and progress on the matter. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for speaking with me. That was Professor Datuk Dr. Noraida Endut with a Unit for Research on Women and Gender, KANITA at USM. And that wraps up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.